Flawless.
Flawless victory. Fatality.
Flawless. Man, Mortal Kombat.
I know,
Those were the days.
Right? Dude, really all the way until the late 90s, early 2000s, I feel like we were still living in some semblance of like, things are pretty good. They weren't great for everybody all the time, obviously. You know, when you really go macro and you look at the whole world and wars and lots of people that are suffering through lots of different, you know, times in human history. But from a technological standpoint, like we had reached the pinnacle of like having really cool shit that we hadn't quite gotten into the smartphone yet. We hadn't quite gotten into social media and all of the everything that comes with that. And now AI is about to destroy it all.
AI is insane. Are you polite with ChatGPT? I am, just in case for the day that they become sentient.
Yeah. Is it sentient or sentient? Or is it a tomato?
I think that's what it is.
Vitamins and vitamins.
I think somebody once corrected me, whether or not they were right or wrong. It's like one of those words that I'm insecure about.
Then it gave you that little trauma.
Yeah.
I'm always going to say sentient.
That and prescient. I've often said prescient, and somebody once corrected. I don't know if they're right or wrong, but they corrected me, and I don't like being corrected. And I'm like prescient. But in the back of my head, I've got this insecurity.
That's ridiculous. It's crazy how we're built like that. Like one person with a confident enough take will make us question everything and go with that take.
Yeah. And
then we wonder why we get into the situations that we get into with leaders and things and the media. And like, it's incredible how just malleable we are, you know, and why are we malleable? Because we don't want to be outside of what is accepted. We don't want to find ourselves outside of the village, outside of the tribe, and all of that stuff links down to survival. And it's so crazy
it's so crazy. And you have a unique vantage point. I mean, you most recently, you've really stuck your neck out in a big way, particularly in an industry where it's particularly uncouth to do so.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think that, and we've talked about a little bit about this because I saw you at the Maha Ball and we were celebrating as we should.
That was a good time.
It was a really good time, and it was a lot of really wonderful souls, and I loved that it was as bipartisan as it was, and I hope that it continues to be that people recognize that this isn't a left or right issue, that this is like the health and wellness of ourselves, our children, this world. That should be everybody. That should be everybody. We should want to root out all the corruption and all of these regulatory agencies, and make sure that the good people in those agencies stay, and make sure that the people that are on these, the lobbyist gravy train are out, and we're getting back to that health and wellness. But yeah, anyway, at the Maha Ball, we talked a little bit about it, but listen, Hollywood is, and always has been, a deeply, rooted in liberalism and more leaning left. And I myself, as a libertarian, I even identify with some of those concepts. And I have a lot of wonderful friends that we might not agree on certain policies or how to get to a certain destination, but we agree that we should get to a better destination as people, as a country. But it's always been, a little dicey. For 25 years of my career, I had to walk a pretty fine line of being genuine, being my authentic self, speaking what I believe to be true, but doing it in a way that didn't, rub someone so wrong that it's like, I'm never working with that guy again. But when it came to this election, I just, I like a lot of people, I followed Bobby to Trump. I didn't vote for Trump the first couple of elections. I didn't vote for either major candidate. I was so angry with these options that we were constantly being handed as if this is the best that we can do on both, in this duopoly. And so, for two elections prior to this one, I voted for Gary Johnson and I voted for Marianne Williamson. I think that was who, right? I think who ran as the Libertarian candidate, because I was voting my conscience. In this election, though, looking at the options that we had, looking at also, I think it's really not good that our Democratic friends weren't willing to call the Democratic Party out more vocally, more harshly. It'd be like, hey, listen, I'm with you. I'm a Democrat. I want to vote Democrat. But to just install Kamala Harris as the candidate with no due process, with no vote, that is the most undemocratic thing that you could do. And in doing so, they, in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinion, obviously the more than half the country, they installed someone that was a very weak candidate.
Yeah.
She was not who you want to be leading the free world, you know, and was evidenced over and over again in various interviews that we, you know, came to find out were doctored, were, you know, snipped together here and there. You know, I've never met her before. I have no judgments of her from a personal standpoint, but it's like, do you have what it takes to get in there and actually get things done? Or are you a part of the kind of establishment corruption? And to me, it was very clear that she was a part of what all of that was. If you have to install someone like that, it's that pretty much says that to me. Like if somebody's actually good, man, if Bobby Kennedy would have run as the Democratic nominee, I think he actually probably would have won, to be perfectly honest. I think all of those Maha voters, all of the people like us who cared about health and wellness and that really felt like, hey guys, like in the triage of what needs to take place. And this is what I've tried to tell people for a long time. We have got to get back to understanding the concept of triage. Yes, there's a lot of different things we need to tackle. And I don't think any one of these issues is something that's not worthy of conversation. The fact that anybody shuts down any conversation on the left or the right is wrong. It is absolutely wrong. You might vehemently disagree with a person across the table from you, but have the conversation. Because if you feel strongly and you've done your research and you know what you're talking about, you should have no problem sitting across from someone and dissecting whatever this complication is. That's how we get to the bottom of things. That's how science is supposed to work. Always question it. Always be willing to say like, hey, this is the evidence we have now. Let's reevaluate. Let's reevaluate. Let's reevaluate. And I think that unfortunately people just don't want to have a lot of those conversations. And so we end up getting railroaded against each other as this voting populace of like, well, we gotta choose this candidate if for no other reason because they're pro-life or they're pro-choice. And that's it. And it's like, yo, hang on a second. There are so many other things that are going on right now, and we have got to be willing to triage that and say, what is the most important thing? For me, if in fact, and I believe that we are, being systematically poisoned through our food, through our water, through our, you know, like I try to drink out of my Yeti receptacles because I'm been doing everything I can to get PFAs out of my life, right? Like these are things that people are, thank God, becoming more and more aware of. But the poisoning of the entirety of the American populace is everyone. That's every single one of us. We can talk about trans issues. That affects this, you know, a specific part of the population. Still something we ought to be talking about. We need to recognize that they are human beings and they have a voice and they need to voice their concerns. Absolutely. Let's hear those. Let's talk about that. But if we're looking at over here and the weight of it all, it's like, okay, you got a certain amount of the populace that is concerned about this. Understood. Every one of us should be concerned with this over here. And so for Bob, I was like, okay, I got to go with Bobby. And that ultimately led me to, well, you know, the miracle in Butler, Trump just turning his head a little bit. And I mean, if that's not some kind of like miraculous intervention, like I don't know what is. And I do think that it humbled President Trump in a way that he had yet to have been humbled in his life. Yeah. You know, and that was a big thing for me because I do think that deep down in him, he does struggle with his narcissisms or he does struggle with his ego. And, you know, as we all do, we all have parts of this. And he's been a very successful guy. And he, you know, and part of that success is the art of the deal and knowing how to do all of, you know, like really get in there and work and whatever. I'm not that type of a person.
He's a shark.
He is. But that's, you know, when you're dealing with shark infested waters, that's the kind of shark that you need to get in there to start doing some things. I just hope that in all of it, that empathy continues to be like leaned into, that as we're dozing it up, which I think we need to do, that if people we're getting rid of a lot of these jobs. You know, some of those are redundant. Some of those people have been taking advantage of the system for a long time. Yeah. But some of those people are really good people on both sides, on left and right. Like, and I think that we need to have empathy as we go forth into these cuts and downsizings and making sure that we're not just, you know, cutting too deep.
Yeah. Amen. I mean, the government is not a job producing machine. The government is there to, enforce order, to protect its citizens, and the fact that there are seemingly so many people who've just been getting fat off the land. To me, I mean, that's part of what I voted for. I mean, I voted primarily to make America healthy again, whatever that meant.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I'm confused when I hear people on the quote unquote other side saying, well, we didn't elect Elon, but I voted with the expectation that he was going to be applying his mind to rooting out inefficiency and fraud in government.
Absolutely.
And clearly, I mean, we're now, over a month in, it's Doge has been a blunt tool. It hasn't been perfect. And, he's talked about this, the fact that, for example, USAID, it was doing some good stuff, but it was also doing it was wasting a lot of money on stuff that we did not need to be funding.
Dude.
Like a lot.
So deep. I mean, not only were these frivolous spendings, right? Like we could go through it, giving the government the benefit of the doubt, which I don't, because I think the people at the top of most of these decisions are very, very, very corrupted. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, and there's so much money and there's so much power at stake. But when you look at the USAID, if you look at it through the most generous lens, you go, wow, these are a lot of programs that are frivolous and certainly the American taxpayer shouldn't be paying for. Particularly when, on the flip side, entire towns are being burned to the ground or flooded, and these residents, U.S. citizen residents who've been paying into these taxes their whole life are getting $700 checks, if they even qualify for $700, that, by the way, they have to pay back. Did you know this? Though all of those like FEMA checks that people in Lahaina, people in Western North Carolina, Florida, wherever we've had emergencies, the checks, those $750 checks, first of all, they had to apply for them, like as if the government doesn't know the residents who live in these places to go seek them out. It's like our taxes.
Yeah.
Why is it that we have to crunch all the numbers to tell the government, this is what I think I owe you? And if we're wrong, which apparently they know if we're right or wrong because they can crunch the numbers, then they go, no, sorry, you're right. It's like, why don't you just tell me?
Exactly.
Why don't you tell me? It's so insane. Like the IRS is, man, I can't wait for them to Doge the hell out of the IRS, because that is some massive fraud and wasteful spending, I think.
Indeed.
Taxes, and man, we could go into all that stuff. But when it comes to the inefficiencies and corruptions in government, it goes so deep. And it's not just frivolous spending. It is quite literally establishment deep state programs that are being run through USAID as cover, because the CIA can't do certain things under certain, laws, as they shouldn't, right? But so when they're not allowed, because they have to get approval, presidential approval. So when they don't want to go that route, they just go, okay, well, we're going to go fund this program through USAID, and then they'll go do the dirty work. And then we have plausible deniability, and these were, independent contractors and all this stuff. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Was there a turning point for you in terms of your, I guess, political evolution, where these issues started to become of greater importance in your life? Was there, because you mentioned for the past 25 years, you kind of projected your political leanings a certain way. Walk me through like your evolution.
Sure. Yeah. So, well, I mean, me and my sisters, we were raised, and I'm very grateful for this, we were raised to have a healthy level of distrust for the government. And all major industry, because again, absolute power corrupts absolutely. I mean, this is just trying to understand the human condition. If you give the human ego that much fuel to get lost in itself, it will lose itself. It will lose itself to all of that shininess, all of the, oh yeah, oh God, yeah, I can have all of this, And so we have to be wary of that. We have to be willing to recognize that even in a perfect system, I mean, it's like communism. On paper, communism sounds wonderful. It's like we all work an even or fair amount of time. We all get the same amount of stuff. We're all taken care of. Sure, that all sounds real nice. The problem is the humans that are in charge of running that program of communism. Because they go, oh, wait a minute, but we're not really beholden to that, right? We're not, I mean, that's the workers. That's not us. We'll have all the best food, all the best drinks, all the best homes, all the best everything. We'll retain all this power. And then we'll just pat these guys on the head and and that's communism. And it's like, no, that's insane. That's not healthy. So anyway, as a child, I think I had my eyes and ears opened early on to recognizing that there was already a fair amount of corruption in our government. Now, my parents were probably like Kennedy Democrats that made that Reagan Republican shift, like a lot did. And the more I've learned about the Reagan presidency, the more I recognize that, I think that deep down in him, he was a good man. He was trying to do good things. But even he was still kind of a bit of a pawn within the very corrupt system that is our, the government. And so my political kind of journey has been one where I definitely, growing up more Christian conservative, I held some of that more tightly. But as I've grown older and as I've learned more, I've applied those lessons and I go, I think I'm probably much more of a libertarian. I believe that there are certain aspects of governmental regulation or oversight that are good and appropriate to just make sure that the free market continues to work in a healthy way. But I think we've lost track of a lot of that, like it's either not regulated at all or it's overly regulated, and trying to find a healthy balance in all of that is difficult. Since I started working in Hollywood, I've always been, a little bit more conservative or libertarian leaning, and I've never felt like I couldn't be somewhat honest about that and about my faith. I'm a deeply spiritual person, and I was always very, forthright about how I felt about things like that. But again, it was just, it's a continued evolution of who you are. I mean, may we all continue to evolve. May we all continue to be presented with new information and then allow ourselves to digest that, meditate on that, and then be like, okay, like I think there's some truth to this, and I think I need to change my worldview, my perceptions, my paradigm for this new information that's come to me. As long as you vetted it and you believe that, okay, this is real, this is the real stuff. And so my political journey has been one where really ever since I've been an adult, a voting adult, I've tried to discern between whatever of these options we've been given. And more and more and more, we're given the lesser of two evils. And that was just angering me to no end. And I don't think that's right. And I don't think that's fair. And that's certainly not what anyone, left or right, in the populace wants. We want the very best candidate that is truly like a genuine human being, that has empathy, that has understanding, that has humanity in them, intelligence, eloquence, all of the things. Donald Trump doesn't represent all of those things to me. Bobby Kennedy represented far more of those things to me. But like I said, I think that Trump had a real transition in the middle of all of this. And that's why, through the help of our friend Callie Means, these two guys were able to come together and really set aside, I love what Bobby said. We have to, I'm going to butcher the what he said, but essentially it was like, we have to care more about our children and caring about each other more than the hate between us that divides us, that I don't agree with you on that. You don't agree with me on that. That's fine. But this constant like dehumanization that legacy media wants to keep perpetuating, like, that is going to drive us farther and farther and farther apart. And so as I'm watching this like unfold in real time, I stopped watching the news a long time ago because I'm like, this is nothing but indoctrination. This is, even on the right, I think that Fox News is, I know they set out to be fair and balanced. And I think part of that is true because something needed to balance the legacy media on the left, which is the majority of the legacy media.
Yeah.
So there is somewhat of a checks and balances in that. But I think that even Fox News is guilty of doing a lot of the same things that CNN and MSNBC and all of them do, which is you're picking a side and then you're kind of, you're choosing your words and your narrative accordingly, as opposed to just being a straight up journalist and saying, here's the news, here's what happened. Fortunately, we have people like yourself and lots of other podcasters and even, social media, certain news outlets on social media that have been able to maintain a bit more of a neutrality in all of it and just reporting it as it's happening. So all of those things, I just absorb as much as I can. I'm trying to find like, what is the truth? Like, I think that's what all of us really want at the end of the day. Like, what is the fucking truth? Just tell me. Like we're adult enough to be able to handle, I hope, certainly if aliens are real, which we'll get to, which we will get to. We got to be willing to handle whatever is going to come with all of that truth. And so anyway, my political journey has been one of just trying to get to the bottom of things. And as I've done that led me to Bobby and really believing that, man, this was the best candidate we've ever had, like certainly in my lifetime. And, but the Democratic Party was not going to let that happen. He was not the guy that they were going to be able to ultimately control, I think, right? Like they needed somebody that would, like Kamala, it was like, they were going to say, you're going to do this. And all right, I'm going to go do that. And Bobby was like, no, he's got too much integrity. He's just got too much integrity. And damn it, if I don't love him for it even more, because like I see that, and which is why I'm so grateful that even though he ultimately had to pull out of the race and isn't the president, joining forces with Trump. And like you said, I voted for Elon. I voted for, J.D. Vance, obviously, Tulsi Gabbard. Like, I wanted all of that. I wasn't voting for Donald Trump. I was voting for Donald and all of those other elements. Because if it was just Donald and it wasn't all those other people, the truth is, I don't know, I might have gone in libertarian again. I might have done something. But there was a marked shift in President Trump, I believe, for the absolute better. And then this galvanization, this, forming Voltron to, in some ways with a broad strokes, taking things out, gutting this cancer. We've got to get a little more surgical with it, I think. And maybe that's following, hopefully. It's like, okay, let's clean the board and then let's start placing the pieces back on the board that we recognize are vital to this. But in order to do that, we got to clean it all first.
Yeah. So
that's where my political journey and affiliations have kind of taken me. And to your point, Hollywood is not very open to that, by and large. But I will also say I have a lot of friends in this industry that were very scared. I know they voted for Donald Trump, and by the way, and even very happily did so. But they feel very silenced,
like closeted about it.
Yeah. Because it's not without ramifications. I mean, there's definitely been, I'm still working and I can still get work and I'm very grateful for that. But that's because a lot of this was also a very measured, I didn't just do it willy nilly. Like I thought and prayed on it hard. Tulsi Gabbard and I became friends. She asked if I would go and do this town hall with her and Bobby when they were, actively campaigning for Trump. And I was like, okay, I feel like this could be God calling me into this next chapter of my life, which would be crossing the Rubicon, which is like, there's no way to come back from this. People in my industry will, no matter, even though I was a little more conservative or spiritual, like they could handle that. They could even handle it, even though I got a lot of crap for supporting Bobby early on. They could even kind of stomach that. But the idea of going and supporting Orange Hitler, like, how dare you? How dare you go and are you full of hate? Like friends that knew me for 20 years who I would have thought, me, my heart, that like, I'm not, just because I'm voting for this guy doesn't mean I stand for every bit of who he is or what he says or how he says it or whatever. But can we not just try to step back as objectively as possible and look at the issues in the world, our border? Like, come on, guys, like these are massive issues. We've got to tackle this. And you can't look at me in the eyes and tell me that the Biden-Harris administration did anything positive when it came to securing our borders. In fact, they did the opposite. Why did they do that? That's a whole other rabbit trail we can go down. But the fact remains, our borders were a mess. It was a nightmare. And I also have a lot of empathy for people that want to immigrate to this country. I want everyone to live a better life. But that we can't sustain just having an open border and letting everybody just come into the country. And anybody who doesn't understand that doesn't understand basic economics. It just doesn't sustain. It cannot sustain. And so, there all of these things, it was all of that was too important. And I thought and I prayed on it. When Tulsi asked me about it, I was like, okay. And I told my team, I said, I've been invited to do this thing. I feel very compelled to do it. but I just want to run it by you guys so you know that this is something I'm contemplating. And to their, credit, they said, listen, there's probably going to be some blowback from this, and it's not going to make it easier for you. But we know you, and we care about you, and we support you. Whatever it is that you feel like you need to do, we will support you in that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I can count on one hand the celebrities that I know, like the Hollywood celebrities that I know that have come out in support of this administration.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, those that came out, campaigning for the opposing side, I mean, countless, innumerable.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing that you haven't gotten more blowback from it.
Well, I mean, I have. I mean, if you look at my, there have been various posts on social media that I made that were just eviscerated by countless, maybe bots, maybe real people, maybe both. I don't know. I mean, the amount of like bot farming and who knows who's controlling a lot of all of that stuff, and that they have agendas and they will go. And it's really crazy. Like you can almost sense it, like you'll get I check through my DMs, from random people, because I might have a friend that I don't follow or something and I haven't seen for a while, and that they're able to get a hold of me. So I'll look through a lot of these comments or a lot of these messages, and they're, like 0 followers, 0 posts, but it's this, picture and whatever. And they're like, you fucking horrible Trump lover. You hope you die. I'm like, is that a real person, or is that somebody that's controlling a whole bunch of these little things that just wants to just lean in? And by the way, for anybody out there watching that, I mean, I think if you're watching this show, you probably are more open to these kinds of concepts that we're talking about. But
sure.
But I cannot stress enough, whether you're on the left or the right, if you really want to change somebody's mind, if you really believe in what you believe in and you believe that you're standing in the right, awesome. If you want to bring people to your side, the last thing that you should do is try to shame them there, because it will never work. It will not. Well, occasionally there are some very, very scared people that say a thing and then they get piled on and they're like, I'm sorry, I'll never say it again, and I'm with you, and whatever I need to say, I'll say it. But somebody like me, like I'm only doing these things because I firmly believe in them, to the point where it's like, I don't think there's another option, And so people coming in and piling in and just the toxicity and the hate and just venom. And I look at these profiles, and I honestly, I pray for them. I feel bad that if they're a real person, that they have been so spun up in that new speak nonsense, just like hive-minded, I got to be on the right side of history that's constantly changing depending on whatever that group is telling them is the right thing. But as far as like in the industry itself, I've definitely lost some friends that were my friends for many years who don't follow me on social media anymore. And that hurts, like I wish I thought that they knew me better than that, to at least call me and say like, hey, I know you. And by the way, and a few friends, when I, came out and endorsed Trump, they texted me and they're like, are you okay? Like, I know your heart. I know that you love people. How could you go and support somebody who clearly doesn't love people? And I'd say, hey, I would love to chat with you about it, And though we still ended up on different sides of the conversation, we saw each other. We saw each other's heart. We recognized that we just believe a very different thing in this right now. And they might think that I'm very deceived, and maybe I am. I'm willing to always recognize that as much research and thought and prayer and everything that I put into something doesn't mean somehow I'm not susceptible to being programmed or brainwashed or anything. I personally don't think that I have. I think that the brainwashing is much more on the other side of a lot of these conversations. But I don't look at anyone on that side and somehow think you're an evil person because you listened to what I think is a lie and you believed what that lie is. I have pity for that. I go, oh man, okay, well, I hope that they see through it. And I would hope that these friends of mine would be feeling that same thing for me. And I hope that they see through this. I hope that they're able to navigate through this, And then as far as work is concerned in the industry, like I said, I mean, fortunately, this all happened at a time in my career where I had, 25 years in and done enough work where I have enough of a value in the industry where I still get offers and I can still go and work. But there's certainly, people at bigger studios and whatnot that it's like, I'm not working with that guy. I'm not going to go work with that guy. And unfortunate, but also one of the things that I weighed heavily in my decision was, I've been preaching for years that AI is knocking at the door and it's only a matter of time before it kicks the door in and all of this is completely disrupted, if not dissolved in many ways. And that's what I firmly believe this. So how could I firmly believe that, be trying to warn people about this, and then be worried about jobs a few years from now downstream in my industry that I don't even think will be creating those jobs? So once I kind of let all that sink in, I was like, okay, this feels like it's now or never. If I'm going to go stick my neck out and possibly suffer whatever that blowback is going to be and possibly lose out on certain jobs that I would have, loved to have done working with creators I'd love to work with, but I don't satisfy the opinions of some of those decision makers, well, then so be it. Because, and maybe this is the moment to talk about AI, but did we talk about AI at all?
Not at all.
At Maha?
How are you so prescient?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you fill your schedule?
How do you pronounce that damn word? No, but so you've been talking about AI for years, because I feel like for most people, this is something that's only really unfolded in a significant way over the past year.
Yeah. So, man, I've just always been real nerdy about technology and the future and, and obviously things in the fictional world like sci-fi and whatever. I mean, I love all of it. But like I've had a subscription to Popular Science for years because I like reading about, oh, wow, here's a new breakthrough here and here's a new breakthrough there. And here's a new product that's been made from the breakthroughs that, came out even just a couple episodes or a couple issues ago. And so I've always had a, pretty decent, though cursory kind of just overview of where we're trending, where we're going. And I love video games and I love, all these things. And they're all so very interconnected and becoming even more interconnected. The lines are very blurry at this point. But so I was tracking along with, okay, well, what are the advancements that we're getting? And I think that one of the most important things is having an understanding of Moore's law, recognizing, and a lot of people don't, but technology is, it's not this gradual, steady, evolution. It is exponential, and exponential numbers for most people, even me oftentimes, if somebody says, here's $1 million, here's $1 billion, here's $1 trillion. Well, you go, okay, $1 million's a lot of money. $1 billion's like twice as much money, and $1 trillion's like 3 times. No. $1 billion is 1,000 millions, and $1 trillion is 1,000 billions. And if you stack those dollars, I'm sure you've seen these graphs and stuff, but it's like it blows your mind. That's exponential. And technology is no different. So what we have today, 6 months later, is 10 times better, and a year later is 100 times better, and 6 months after that is 1,000 times, and so on and so forth. So even when I was looking at the most, rudimentary, if you want to call them that, forms of AI years ago, I'm like, oh no. No, guys, like, what was it, like 18 months ago or something, or let's say 2 years ago, there were images that we were looking at, AI images, kind of for the first time, that people were using whatever those particular, agents were at the time. And they were humans, but they kind of looked a little cartoony, and they had 6 fingers or whatever it was. So you could tell. And of course, all the naysayers or all these people come out and they're like, see, AI is stupid. 6 fingers, it's never going to replace human effort. I'm like, guys, this is now, right now. AI will never be this bad again. It will only get better. It will only get better. And then I think a lot of people, they don't, there's 2 things at play. One is, I think that people are sleeping on how fast, the Moore's law of it all, how fast this all moves. And then you have other people that might even recognize that, but they still are holding on to this almost like a hubris of, but it will never be as good as us. It will never be able to replace the human soul, the human effort, right?
Creativity, etc.
All of it. And I think that that's folly. I've always felt that to be folly, because even if you look at what's happened up to this point, it is already starting to replace human effort, and it will only continue to get better. And then, of course, I think the last category is people saying, well, yes, it could happen, and yes, it could be, technically as good, but I'm not going to support it because I'm a human, and they kind of settle in this altruism. By the way, an altruism I think we all need to have. Desperately, we need to have, and we need to have it across industries, because we need to start looking at people in other industries that we don't work in and say, hey, I'll support you. I'll support you to continue to have a human job. Will you support me to continue to have a human job? Because we have to, I think, literally globally as humans, we have got to galvanize and try to make that happen. If we just let everybody try to figure it out for themselves, if everyone outside of the entertainment industry, if all of a sudden they are inundated with a bunch of AI content that is brilliant, that looks and sounds and feels amazing, and it feels just like a human made it. It's indiscernible. You will know if it's human made or not, because there might be some watermark or a stamp or a thing that, in the same way it says rated R, rated PG-13, it'll say, made by AI or made by humans. Okay, fine. You might have some indicator that it's not a human made movie. But if it costs you a fraction of the price, and you get to scan your face and your voice, and you get to be the star of that movie that you got it, but also you had a hand in creating, because you got to say, well, I want these elements using your creativity, but no actual movie making skill. So you don't have a talent for movie making in any of the disciplines it takes to make the movie, but you have creativity, because we all do. So then all of us can sit at our homes and just be like, all right, well, by the way, this is an example I've used before, but I think it's a good one. And this is not like, I have so much love for Disney and for Warner Brothers and for a lot. I mean, like I love this industry and a lot of the history of this industry, but I use Disney as an example because they have an incredible library of IP. Okay. At this point, Lucasfilm and Marvel and all of these things. So in just a couple of years, it wouldn't surprise me at all. In fact, I believe this will probably happen for a little uptick in your already, $160 a year, I think, is a Disney Plus subscription right now. So maybe for like $180 a year now, for 20 more bucks, you, Max, get access to the Disney Creator Corner. And in the Disney Creator Corner, you get to use their proprietary AI model to source any corner of their library and decide whatever you want to make. So now Disney, as they're scrambling, trying to figure out, well, people aren't going back to theaters and people aren't like, so what are they thinking? Well, we got to figure out a way to lower our costs, to make better margins and, make our shareholders happy, because that's all industry is. So of course, why not go to your well of all of these characters and all of these stories and all these writers and directors and everybody else that created all your content, and you give the audience the ability now to go and say, okay, I want a movie with Luke Skywalker and Indiana Jones and the Avengers and, let's say, Flynn Rider from Tangled, because why not? And I want them on a treasure hunt on Mars. And it feels like it was directed by Steven Spielberg and a score by Hans Zimmer, whatever, enter. And then a one-of-one that's never been seen by anyone in the world that you, the creator, got to, well, look at me. And all of us will get that dopamine hit. All of us will feel like the creator. We'll all feel like, look at me, I'm a filmmaker now. And then you'll want to share it. I mean, we live in this constant world of creators that are sharing their creations. Oh, yeah.
What was that?
Yeah.
Harley?
Somebody's on a hog. And so they'll want to share it. And then we're just going to have endless amounts of content that people are either generating on their own or generating through studios, enabling them to access their IP for a nominal price.
Yeah, but to play devil's advocate, don't you think that there's going to be the same experiential difference that exists between eating at a Vegas buffet, where you can literally pick from, all of these different global cuisine options and stuff them onto one plate, versus a curated, personalized experience in a restaurant from a chef, like omakase experience. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I do.
Do you think the AI created? I mean, you're an artist. Do you think AI created art is going to have the same resonance that even the same art would be, knowing that it comes from a human being, would possess? Like, there was a Sam Altman posted something recently. I guess he's the head of OpenAI, which created ChatGPT,
yeah.
And he said that there's like a new model that's able to write creatively. And he posted I think he posted a poem. Like it had outputted a poem. And somebody in the comments underneath that post was like, it feels kind of empty. Like, knowing that this didn't come from a human, like, there's no resonance value.
Listen, I definitely think that that's a factor. I think that's, and by the way, I hope that we all wake up enough to want to really understand and feel the difference. But we're I think as a whole, as a society, we've been beaten down so much and disconnected from ourselves through bad food, bad water, all of the things that are slowly poisoning us, whether that's been intentional or not. I think our own kind of intuitions have been dulled, right? So yes, there will always be a portion of the population that will be much more altruistic. But part of being able to be altruistic is having the finances to be altruistic. It's like, for example, vinyl right now. Why does vinyl even still exist? Why is there a market? And why has it even done a little bit better, in the last 10 years than the 10 years previous? When it's one would argue a inferior musical medium, because it's analoged and you get crackle and whatever, and you can scratch it, when you could have an MP3 that's perfectly digital and you can transport it everywhere and it can be on your devices and whatever, right? Why would you want that? Well, because there is something in the human spirit, in the human awareness, that longs for things that are more visceral, that are more tangible, that feel more here, grounded to earth. And that will always be, I hope, I believe. But vinyl costs more money. So in order to hold that line, you have got to at least take some of your income and say, I'm putting this aside. And instead of spending it on this or that or the other thing, I'm going to spend it on my deep-rooted belief in that vinyl has a superiority that I want. Okay, so I think absolutely that will always play. But I'll use a few examples of things that I think are pretty significant in this conversation. One is, did you ever read Sapiens or Homo Deus?
Sapiens, yeah.
Okay. Fantastic book. I don't read that much, and I could not put that book down. But it's also because I just love history and I love just understanding, like, where did we come from and all of these things, right? And you certainly don't learn enough about that in high school, which is the highest level of education I went through. So I devoured it, loved it. But and then it gets toward the end of the book, and I don't know if you remember this, but you all know Harari, who's a very interesting dude on so many levels, I think, but also very intelligent. I don't think he's right about everything, but I do think he had some really fascinating insights into who we are as humans and where he thinks we are going. And he talks about a little bit about that toward the end of Sapiens, and then he really, expounds on it in Homo Deus. But one of the things he talks about in even Sapiens, I believe he talked about in Sapiens, was that 20 years ago, because he wrote that book a while ago, and I read it even years after it came out. So it's like something like 20 years ago, maybe even before. But they had much more rudimentary versions of AI. And they could take classical music and plug it into a machine. And lots of concertos and symphonies and whatever, right? And sheet music is interesting because it is kind of almost not binary, but it's notes on a page. So like a computer can learn, if you're telling it this is the best of what this is, it learns all the patterns of, it goes into a major chord and a minor and it does this and swell and whatever, so on and so forth. But decades ago, they did this. They fed a bunch of classical music into a computer, and then they had the computer come up with its own symphony or whatever.
Wow.
And then they took it and a human-made concerto, okay? They took the name off of the human-made one. They gave them both. It was like the Pepsi Challenge, and they gave them both to who considered themselves to be classical musical elite snobs. It's like we live and eat and breathe and shit this stuff. And like almost to a person, when asked which one of these is human made and which one was computer made, they all thought that the computer made one was the human made one. And then when they were asked why, before they were told, they go, why? Why do you think that? And they go, well, because it's clearly it's human. You can feel it. You can feel that there's a heartbeat under this, like there's something different. And then it was revealed to them that, oh my God, that is not the case at all. Okay,
Whoa.
so that's one data point. Another data point, saw this again recently on Instagram. There's a company that has been testing music, popular music, for decades. And they're like testing whatever, I don't know, 100,000 songs or some stuff at any given time. They took 500 or 1,000 songs, AI, entirely AI music, and they put that into the testing pool. Every one of those songs is in the top 10. Humans who are just being asked, what do you like? They all said, well, all of those ones, not knowing that they were AI, we like those. In the top 10%, all of those songs, top 10% of all of that music that's being generated. That's kind of terrifying. And then on top of all of that, recently I found out that Spotify, who is a service that I like and that I use, but so oftentimes you'll go and, you'll have a playlist, not one that you created, but hey, play a radio station based on this artist, or play a playlist based on this genre of music, whatever, right? So let's say you pick deep house or smooth jazz or something, particularly something that isn't pop music. So, and maybe there's not even really lyrics to it, but it's like instrumental. Well, it turns out that Spotify has been creating a whole bunch of their own AI musicians and music through those AI musicians. And then they are putting all those into the algorithm so that to the unaware, which is most people, you're just listening to a background track of some smooth jazz. You don't realize that you're not paying almost, however many, I don't know what the percentage is, but even 50% of those artists aren't even real artists, meaning they're not making a living. So for every AI musician that's put into that algorithm, they're taking out a human, right? So already right now in real time, we're watching that people, even people that might care, don't know. Or if they do know, they're like, yeah, but it's still good. It's still accomplishing the thing that I want, which is this background music while I'm working or cleaning my house or whatever it is that I'm working out, whatever, right? So I don't know. I don't believe that we as humans have enough in us unless we really, 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 again, really work together and really try to withstand the flood that is coming. And it is. It's like the waters are rising as we speak. So I think that like personally, I moved out to Austin 8 years ago to go build a movie studio, independent movie studio that's also like a living community for everybody who works there, so we can live there, and then have better school for our kids and health and wellness for everybody and regenerative organic food and all of the things. Like if we want a better world, be the change you wish to see in the world. And I was like, well, I want to go live in a better world, and that starts in living a better community. So if nobody else is going to go create that for me, then damn it, I'm going to go do that. Let's go try and do that. Well, little did I know that along that journey, AI was going to be perhaps the most powerful force in bringing people together. Because if we don't create, I believe wholeheartedly, if we don't create an ark to float through this flood, then all of our jobs are gone. Because human nature is such that here's another example. Sorry, if I'm talking too much, cut me off.
No, I like it. I mean, I have thoughts. I feel like...
Hit me.
Well, I just feel like, okay, so for music, for example, like obviously there's a big market for EDM. And yeah. I think EDM is the perfect application for AI, where AI can come in and create some potentially really dope beats, right? But if I'm listening to, for example, I'm a huge fan of vocal performance. If I'm listening to a singer that I think is really gifted and emotive and guttural and talented, and then I find out that singer is not a real singer, but AI, it's not going to resonate with me. I'm not going to be as impressed, right? Like singing comes from the soul, from the heart. Like I think, superpowers don't exist, but singing is like, if superpowers exist, singing is definitely one of them. Good singing for me, in my view.
Sure.
And I just feel like there are certain ways where music could be, where AI could really benefit music production and whatnot. But when it comes to like vocal performance, I feel like that's an area that illustrates an example for me where AI would likely fall short were I to find out that the vocal performance that I was listening to was computer generated.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like AI could, I'm sure, create some kind of like piano concerto that would be really melodic and pleasing. But
I mean, a lot of musicians would argue that that's just as important and should be coming just as much from the heart. And we would know and should care about the difference between something that was made with real fingers that are attached to a real heart versus something that was just digitally created. You know what I mean? Now, I understand your point that there is something, let's say something different about a human voice than an instrument.
Well, like when you hear a vocal performance that resonates, that gets under your skin, that gives you goosebumps, right? There's a lot subconsciously that's happening there. It's like what's going into that is you're recognizing the emotion, maybe the pain, that like that vocal performance is conveying information beyond just the notes. You know what I'm saying? It's like maybe the pain that singer has gone through. It's it's the practice. It's the 10,000 hours plus that's gone into their developing their technique and their skill. And so I know that AI can probably replicate that on the surface, but I feel like once that disclosure is made that what you're listening to is AI, I just don't know if it's going to have. Maybe it will.
Listen, I agree that there's going to be a lot of people that will resist that. I agree that there'll be people like us that feel a little more altruistic or purist in our take on that, and it's not going to resonate with us in the same way. Okay. But first try to imagine that the technology gets to the point where it's indiscernible. So like, let's make that assumption that it is now from a video, audio, whether it's scripts that are written for the words that are coming out of characters' mouths, to the performances that those characters give, to the songs that, vocalists or whatever might sing, that the technology has gotten indiscernible. So the AI has learned enough, it's modeled after enough where even the vocals in the song sound like, oh, that's a real human. It's absolutely like, you can't tell the difference. And let's say the song's lyrics are in and of themselves something that will resonate with you, something that hits you because of something you've gone through in your life or who you are or whatever, a breakup, right? You're telling me that eventually that's not going to be something that people just kind of go, well, it's still, I mean, listen, look at them. And now it's a difficult comparison because one might not necessarily compare it to being like really emotional, high art or whatever, but the Fast and Furious franchise, so much of that movie is already CG. So much of those actors in those scenes are not them really. That's a digital facsimile of who they are doing whatever that adventure is. And those movies do very, 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 very well. And big budget, right? Nobody's sitting around and saying, well, that's not real. We all know it's not real. Yeah. At least most of us do, right? Some people might think you can drive to the moon, but I don't. I think most people are like, no, that's clearly all fake. That's all CG. But you're still in it. It's still entertaining you enough to the point where it's done that well that they're making 20 of them or whatever, right? So like these to me are just, they're more and more little data points to go like, are we really so special? Number one. And by the way, and I do think like from a woo-woo level, we are a miracle. Life is a fucking miracle that we exist, that all of nature exists in the ways in which it exists, in the homeostasis, if we are smart enough to hold on to that, like regenerative farming. Like it's crazy when you unpack how all of it works together in harmony if you allow it to, if you foster that, it's mind-bending. And to me, all leads back to a creator, to an author of what this is. I don't think this is all just some weird happenstance. I can't. So I believe that there is a real beauty and a specialness in what it means to be human and for a human to create art, which is even more reason why I'm trying to save it. But at no point do I think somehow that I'm trying to save something that can't be replicated outside of what this is. It's creating the alternative. It's creating the vinyl. If vinyl didn't exist, no one would buy vinyl, right? They just buy whatever is available. If we don't create a campus that safeguards human-made content, then it'll all just be AI, and everyone will just go do that. And yes, there'll be people as a hobby, they'll pick up a guitar, they'll, I'll be, oh, wow. He's like, there's not even a career in that anymore. And that person's deciding to go learn a musical instrument or learn another language. Like, wow, that's impressive and archaic. Like, how about it, But I think, here's another, I don't know if it's a data point or not, but speaking to the human condition, and going back to, what kind of brought us together in health. Why are we in the problem that there's a lot of reasons why we're at right now, why we're here in these problems that we're facing right now. But we have record level, obesity and type 2 diabetes and heart diseases and all of these things. And as we know, a lot of that can be traced back to when we stopped eating whole organic foods and stopped eating like locally sourced, where butchers and grocers and everybody were getting a lot of locally sourced stuff that was much more fresh, that had less pesticides on it, that all this stuff. A lot of things that were not disclosed to us, but still, we, from the 70s on, basically, we had the AI of food pop up. It was fast food. It was processed food. And we all willingly, even though we liked eating steak and potatoes, but it cost, might cost a little more money. It takes more time. And, now all of a sudden in the 70s, we start having moms join the workforce. And so there's less time to be there with the kids and make meals. And it's all right because KFC's right around the corner. And we'll go get a bucket of chicken and that'll feed everybody. Now, yes, we all had we were being, again, not given full disclosure about all the ingredients used in a lot of these things. So a lot of the issues that are downstream of that are not things that we willingly kind of walked into, but we all were watching it happen in slow real time. People are getting fatter, guys. And there's lots of data that keeps coming out about probably not great to eat this or that or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but I know I shouldn't. I know that I don't want that, but I want it because it's fast and it's easy. And I think that AI is going to provide something that it won't even be the fast food version of it, even though it will be the price of the fast food and it will be even faster than fast food. But it will look incredible. You'll be looking at a steak, a great ribeye and some broccoli and all. It's like, well, I don't know. Like this one, it's going to cost me a lot more money. This one's going to be this, but seemingly they taste the same. Seemingly they're going to be the same for me. I think I'm going to go that direction. So yes, I think that there is in all of us the desire to not want to go down that road, but it's going to require us not reacting within our pocketbooks when an AI movie is a fraction of the price. And you get all the bells and whistles. Like I said, you get to scan your face and your voice and you get to be in the movie. And a lot of people will be like, yeah, but I don't really want that. I go, what about your kids? If all of a sudden there's a new Superman movie and your kid gets to be the new Superman in the movie, are you not going to pay $2 to go shut little Timmy up who's like, I want to be Superman? And you're like, $2, go. Oh, $2 more and they can make it there whatever they want. Fine, here's $10 more. Like, and then on top of all that, you get these other little bells and whistles, bringing people back from the dead. There are agents who represent long dead celebrities, actors, and everybody, because they can go to the estate of that family and pay them a couple $1 million and say, hey, we want the name, image, and likeness of your great, Gene Kelly. Can we use Gene? Yeah, here's $5 million. Sure, great, go for it.
Whoa.
I love Singing in the Rain. If all of a sudden I had the ability to go watch Singing in the Rain 2 with Gene Kelly and Donald O'Connor and Debbie Reynolds, and the music was fashioned after the music that was in the first movie, so it feels the same and it's catchy and it's fun and it's, oh my God. And even though I know AI made all of it, and even though I know it's displacing me as an actor in my own industry, I'd be like, I'll pay $5 for that. You know what I'm saying?
Hollywood agents are now representing dead celebrities.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about traditional Hollywood agencies. I think that, although some may, but I know of other kind of boutique, these newer agencies that are popping up because they saw this opportunity.
That's wild.
It's crazy.
Damn.
It's crazy. So, all of these are, again, these just little data points that when I try to read the tea leaves, I go, where is this all leading? Where is this all going? And again, so much of it is just financial bottom line for the people that are in charge of an industry. They're all trying to maximize their profits. Always. I wish that we lived in a more altruistic system that valued people over profits. We don't. Pick your industry. They don't value the people over the profits. They will come to us. They will lay us off. They will take away our bonuses. They will cut our pay. They will do all of the things, benefits, whatever. And they'll always do it in this our hands are tied, as shareholders. I mean, you get it. Capitalism. And that's what they do. And then we all just go, I guess that's the system. No matter how much we kick and scream, but that's legal. It's totally legal for them to do that. In fact, something I learned recently, which blew my mind, Henry Ford, back in the day, wanted to take more of his profits and pay his employees better and give them better benefits and all these different things. And the Dodge brothers sued Ford in court and basically said, it is your obligation to your shareholders to maximize their profits over giving raises to your people. And I first saw this, I was like, that feels a little, is that real? And then I started to watch other videos and other people that go through, literally deep dive through all the Wikipedia and everything. And it is absolutely true, which is why that set a precedent right then, where every company could basically just lean on that and go, well, we want to do better for everybody, but we can't. It's it's just not. It's not in the best interest of our shareholders, and if that's the way the whole system works, then I don't see the people in charge pumping the brakes and saying, "Hang on a second, guys, this is going to displace a lot of jobs. Yes, that will save us a lot of money, but that's not going to be good for all of us in the long run." They don't care. They're seemingly not doing anything about that. So that's why I think we're about to walk into a world where, and again, even outside of entertainment, every industry, every job, everything, I don't see it not happening. So
ripe for disruption.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any strategies for listeners, viewers to stay ahead of and even capitalize on the impending AI revolution? I mean, what is one to do? Just
homestead.
I think familiarizing yourself with the tools as much as you possibly can. I mean, that's valuable. There's no area of my work that AI hasn't actually helped to enhance.
Oh yeah. No, listen, just to be clear, I don't think AI in a vacuum or I don't think it is the evil. As long as it remains a tool in a human's toolbox, awesome. May it continue to optimize all of our lives. I'm so about it. I'm so about the potential applications in health and wellness in lots of places that I think would streamline and optimize and make life so much better. The problem starts really hitting us when it just starts replacing people whole cloth. We're about to see this. I don't know how long it'll ultimately take because a lot of cars on the road don't, people hold on to cars for a long time, but we're getting self-driving and self-driving taxis and self-driving trucks and self-driving everything eventually. So the idea of being a driver, well, that's going the way of the dodo. Nobody's going to need anyone to actually, and then eventually you'll have probably AI flying planes and AI, so all of those things. Now, when will all of that happen? I don't know. I think to your point, familiarizing yourself with AI, understanding what's at stake and understanding how it's all working is absolutely a thing.
I mean, LA is full of self-driving cars. It's wild. I didn't realize that this was just an LA thing. I thought that they were all around the United States. So when people come to LA and they see them for the first time.
It's the Waymos and stuff?
The Waymos.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah. It's a lot. But so I think, familiarizing yourself with what all of it is and what all of it does is a big part of it. But I think that genuinely spending time asking yourself, if in fact these things come to pass, and if all of these industries are disrupted, and if these layoffs start to happen, then what can I do? What can be not just gainful employment, but how can I? And so, I joke when I say homestead, but I also am kind of not joking. I think that in order for us to move through this, and the only way out is through, right? You can't stop progress. You can only hope to guide it. So I think we all have to take a really hard look at what we do for a living. God, I'm about to have a child, and I'm like, what is their school even going to be like? What are they going to learn about in order to prepare them for the world that they're going to be in? I have no idea. But I tell you what, the most important thing is open your eyes.
Yeah.
Like we cannot be the ostrich with our head buried in the sand and somehow just be like, I hope it all works out. Like, no. Do not do that. Don't walk around in a bunch of fear and worry, but really awaken yourself. Like really open your eyes to what is happening in the world right now, because it's happening way faster than you think it is. Like way faster.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, I mean, I it's like magic to me when I use ChatGPT for pretty much everything. You know that people are now using it in place of therapists? Like people are using it for therapy.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy.
Oh yeah. And it's only going to...
Like my girlfriend pulls this on me all the time. She'll like upload our text back and forth to her ChatGPT, and she'll be like, what is Max trying to communicate? She'll weaponize it against me.
What?
In our relationship, yeah. In a kind and loving and and often humorous way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy.
Oh yeah. I mean, listen, lawyers are going to... I honestly think obviously they'll be the best fit to fight it in court, but...
Right.
But I mean, imagine you've got an AI agent that has access to every case that's ever been argued in the history of law sitting next to you, that can rapidly and eloquently respond to every single thing in your court case. Why would you want a flesh and blood lawyer who's fallible, who needs, by the way, even all of like lawyers are starting to let go of a lot of their, paralegals and stuff like that. Like they don't need them to research it because they're just bad, And yes, and people say, yeah, but it's not perfect. Or yeah, it's not right now. Not right now. Sure, there can be some errors that it pulls up the hallucinations that AI will have, and so it'll like offer up a court case that never happened or whatever. I don't know, but that's just fine tuning. So
it's pretty damn good. You can upload your blood labs to it.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about the fact that like doctors, for example, medical doctors, they have virtually no training when it comes to nutrition. But oftentimes, if your labs aren't looking the way that you want them to look, or the way that your doctor wants them to look, they'll make a recommendation. They'll say like, eat less red meat, eat fewer eggs, things like that. Like archaic knowledge.
Exact wrong thing to
the exact wrong. Yeah, exactly. Like the knowledge that they're parroting 30 years after they got like 2 hours of training and
exactly
for it in medical school. But now these days you can upload your labs to ChatGPT and it'll give you really sound, evidence-based, logical advice. I was uploading my prior to my back surgery, I was uploading my MRIs, and it was, ultimately I ran everything through, by my surgeon, but AI, I mean, it's harvesting from all of the world's knowledge.
Yeah.
Not just like the clinical experience of one physician in one town, based on his singular expertise.
What happened to your back, by the way?
I had a severely degenerated L5S1 disc. So I had like...
Is that like a genetic thing or?
No, I heard it squatting like 10 years ago.
Oh!
Yeah. 10 years ago, I was in the gym and I was about to perform a back squat. And on the first rep on the way down, I mean, I felt like what I could only describe as crushing like I had crushed my disc in that moment. At the time I didn't know what had happened, but that's how it felt.
Right.
And it began this 10-year journey of degeneration. And most of the time it was like fairly manageable, but like bending over was getting more and more difficult. And over the past year in particular, it was just like really bad. Like I was getting like increasingly disabled. It was crazy. So I was I've generally had been pretty even keeled in terms of like my mental health, but it was starting to weigh on me, and I was like projecting out the next 40 or so years of my life. Like, how am I going to live like this? Like, if it's this bad now. And surgery is obviously terrifying, but I had a bunch of different opinions, and I started putting feelers out for my options, and I discovered artificial disc replacement. So basically, they went in through my front, through the anterior.
Right.
They move your organs aside, and they gut out, they scrape out the old disc, and they put in this like amazing titanium, these two titanium plates, and there's a plastic core. but it's like a very biocompatible plastic. It's the same
Yeah,
kind of plastic that they use in like hip replacements.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And it's changed
No
my life.
PFAS.
No, I don't know, man. But you know, risk benefit. Like it's given me my life back.
Yeah, totally.
It's incredible. So,
well, you know, speaking of like medical diagnoses and things like that, like, you know, what AI will be able to help us with. There's this whole other. Have you heard of the telepathy tapes?
no. What are those?
Bro, so
That sounds like a rabbit hole.
highly recommend. It's another podcast, so listen to this one first, and then, you know, obviously always prioritize. But so I think Kai Dixon is her name. She's like an investigative journalist. She documentarian, and she stumbled into the world of nonverbal autistic children, and that they are telepathic.
Whoa.
And like basically all of them. And I'm in like episode 8 of it right now. And she goes and visits all these different families. By the way, a lot of these families have already been working with scientists, doctors that have been in the background trying to bring this story to light. But as you can imagine, traditional science and medicine is like, no. This is fairy tale. This is nonsense. These are, you know, this is not real. This is not real. But bro, I mean, based on everything that I've listened to in these, and also just, you know, there's a website, the telepathytapes.com website or whatever, and there's video and lots more information. But essentially, and they also talk about in the podcast, they talk about how this is not, it shouldn't be something that super surprises us, in that so many other animals in the animal kingdom, we are one of the many animals in the animal kingdom, but so many other animals communicate telepathically. They know things telepathically. And they bring all these really interesting examples. One of them, actually, just a tangent. There was a dude who saved a bunch of elephants in South Africa, brought them to like his wildlife preserve, and had to ingratiate himself with the herd in order to like move them to his preserve, and almost died in the process because, you know, you can get trampled by elephants. And but he did it, and he got them there. They were all going to get like killed because they were screwing around with this village in this other place. But he staved their execution, got them to his preserve. And then 5 years later, the man passed away. 2 days after he died, this herd of like 30-something elephants shows up at his house.
Whoa.
Trumpeting and like in mourning, like celebrating and mourning this guy. Like it was clear as day. They arrived 2 days after because it took them 2 days travel to get to the guy's house, which means they telepathically knew that he died, exactly when he died, and then started making their way to his home. And every year on the same day, elephants can't read a calendar, and yet they know the exact day to show up on the anniversary of his death, and they come and mourn him at his home. Like, this is real stuff, right? So that's just an example of the rest of the animal kingdom.
Just got goosebumps.
Right?
Damn.
It's incredible. But so these kids that all of us for so long have looked at with a lot of empathy and pity, but probably I certainly have looked at a lot of these kids and been like, oh man, like how much of them is even in there, right? Like they're nonverbal, they act out, they don't have a lot of control over their bodies. This is part of the reason why they're nonverbal. So you make assumptions like, well, they're learning, you know, impaired, and, you know, maybe they're not so intelligent or whatever it is. And what is continuing to be learned now is that while from a physical aspect, it looks like they're, you know, either not really there or they're there, but they're, you know, not very intelligent or whatever. No, they're very intelligent, and they are just trapped in a body that does not allow them to communicate. And so over the last 10-ish plus years, maybe 20 years, they've gone to these spelling boards and techniques where these kids one at a time will spell out letters, and they will spell incredible prose and poetry and all manner of different things. But more than that, they can straight up read your mind. They go and talk to all these parents, all of these therapists, all of these teachers of all of these nonverbal autistic children. And every one of them, like a lot of them were really afraid to come out and talk about it because that sounds crazy, and they didn't want to be discredited, particularly if they're a scientist or a doctor or something like that, or parents being, you know, called kooks or whatever. But it's being verified over and over and over and over and over again that not only do these kids have the ability to read their people close to them, their minds, but there's a place called the Hill, which is basically like a telepathic group chat room that all these kids in various places in the world all talk about. They go to the Hill. Like, where do they learn this word? There's slang that they create up at the Hill that then disseminates through all these kids. So in different parts of the world, they'll use this word ploink, Ploink. But how would this kid know this word? And how would that kid know? It's not a word in the dictionary. It's like all of this wacky stuff. But on top of all of that, some of them are so in tune that they're able to scan someone's body telepathically and find out what's wrong with them.
Whoa.
Dude.
That's crazy.
There was a story in one of the most recent episodes I listened to. It was like this lady was suffering from something, and this woman who had worked with, a teacher who had worked with this nonverbal autistic child, who's now like an adult man, she telepathically was like, hey, my friend Margaret, whatever, is suffering from something. We don't know what it is. And he was able to telepathically go and tune into her body, and it was exactly what was wrong with her.
And so how do they communicate it? Like with
either telepathically, or he'll use a speller, like a spelling board.
Whoa.
Or something like that. And then listen, once Elon, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Neuralink, because with Neuralink, if it doesn't somehow like dull their ESP and telepathic sense, it will allow them to then be able to just like think things and like use their eyes and move things around. And I mean, we're stepping in. So between AI and what we're now recognizing in this whole other realm of energy and telepathy, and then you add UAPs and UFOs and all that stuff to the mix. Do you follow any of that stuff?
Barely. Like, no, not really.
Not interesting to you?
No, it's interesting. I'm just very skeptical. So the fact that also that now AI exists, I feel like that's going to muddy the waters in terms of getting a real signal. I mean, it's obviously going to help identify if this stuff is actually happening. I think that's like, I'm optimistic, but also why do we have no like high def? Like, there's more cameras now, around than ever before, and these cameras are more advanced than ever before. But yet the footage that ends up surfacing is always super grainy and low res, right?
Yeah,
or is there something I've missed?
Well, no, I mean, there's definitely stuff that is more high res that I've seen, but I was back in Austin for a few days of South by. A friend of mine, Dan Farah, directed a documentary called The Age of Disclosure that's getting a lot of really great press, and as it should. It basically has 35 of the top, like, I think Alfonso's one of the guys, and, Grosh and Fravor, but so a bunch of the Navy pilots, a bunch of like deep in the government agencies, some congressmen, Secretary Rubio, they're all in this documentary.
Whoa.
So it's not just like a one-off podcast here and there, which I've listened to plenty, but it's like all of them in one fell swoop in like an hour and 45 minutes, breaking down how, from their perspective and their collective perspective, they all point to the same things. Of where we are right now. And they all of them are like, we are not alone. We are absolutely 100% not alone in the universe. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that these are beings from another planet? Like, are they extraterrestrial? Are they extra dimensional? They're from our planet, but a different dimension of our planet. Are they extra temporal? Like, they're from this planet and dimension, but a different time, like they're time travelers? Or is there a combination of all of the above, including, are there reverse engineered UAPs that the government actually built and controls and whatnot? And they tackle all of it. Like, I've heard a lot of people saying that some of these guys are government plants because they're trying to basically say it's aliens, and so that we're all scared of the aliens. So we all then, we want to feed the military industrial complex to fend off the aliens. When really all of it is government-made UAPs and all that stuff. Based on this documentary and other things that I've researched, none of the people in the documentary were saying these are evil things that we need to go to battle with. All of them are saying, like, guys, we need to be aware of them. We need to recognize that our technology is way outmatched by any of this stuff. But we don't believe that they're not still coming in peace, right? So they're not trying to activate any of the war machine for it. And they also, in the documentary, they make a really big point of talking about that this is government corruption. So they're not even like government stooges in it, because they talk about what's called the Legacy Program. The Legacy Program was started in 1947, I think, under Truman, right after we started detonating nuclear bombs. And then lo and behold, we start getting a whole bunch of visits, right? And a lot of people say, well, that's coincidental and so on and so forth. And isn't it convenient that most of these UFO, UAP sightings are in the United States and blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, because we're a nuclear powerhouse. And it makes all the sense in the world to me if I am either from another planet and have a capability of kind of monitoring the galaxy or the universe or whatever, or if I'm a version of us from the future, or that's been living with us this whole time somehow under the water or whatever it is. So many different rabbit holes you can go down, but they have a vested interest in us not destroying ourselves and destroying this place and becoming a major problem in all of time and space and all of these things by us unleashing hell upon what is this wonderful place that is the earth, you know? And so, so they're very much, you know, sorry, I tangented there a little bit, but that's why in 1947, after we were detonating bombs and we got Roswell and everything, all the people on the documentary are like, oh yeah, there was a crash. There was an alien Roswell situation crash. There were biologics, 4 of them that were taken from that craft. And all of that's been hidden, and it's been hidden in a program called the Legacy Program that was constructed. The CIA is the head of that program, and then under that is the Department of Energy, the Air Force, or at least parts of the Air Force, which is why Air Force pilots never report on these things, but it's always the Navy pilots that are reporting on it, interestingly. Yeah. And then all these defense contractors like Lockheed Martin and, you know, Boeing and whatever else, because they've all been charged with, or at least parts of their companies have been charged with doing a lot of this reverse engineering, because they go and find these alien craft parts that they don't understand, but they clearly use 0-point energy and gravitational forces and, you know, whatever it is. And part of the documentary they talk about as far as like, why do we not have a lot of clear imagery from it? The reason why they believe, and there's like physicists that were part of this documentary that talk about this, the reason why they believe craft are able to move in the way that they move, literally, you know, from boom, boom, like there's no, and like the G-forces on a human pilot would destroy this, right? Like we would turn into a puddle of mush. They can go in an instant. They can go through different mediums, through water, through air, through space, whatever, and it doesn't skip a beat. It's because they are using some kind of a technology to form essentially kind of like a field around it that warps time and space. And so that field itself makes getting footage and photos and whatnot of it difficult, because you're shooting through what is essentially a force field. So that was one of the things they talked about in all of it. But I don't know. Dude, I mean, it all felt very convincing to me.
What's the name of the documentary again?
The Age of Disclosure.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with the concept of, I've heard some, I don't know, you know, if they're physicists or mathematicians, but there's the concept of how unlikely it would be for, if there is life out there, extraterrestrial life, how improbable it would be that those life forms would be on the same evolutionary trajectory as we are. So they would either be super, like, not as developed, like just at the very birth of life in whatever planet they originate from, or just so advanced compared to us that they'd be able to outsmart us. They'd just be like inconceivably advanced compared to us, right? Like the odds of them being on our level of technological advancement, like that would be highly improbable. Well,
but they're not. They are well advanced.
Yeah, well advanced.
To what we have, and yet still, I don't know. I mean, you know, it's interesting when people talk about what are the odds of this and what are the odds of that. I mean, I'm sure you've read some of these stats before. I won't even be able to recall the exact numbers, but the very idea that life exists on this planet, like the conditions that have to exist, like our exact proximity to the sun, the moon's exact proximity to us, how it situates itself versus our gravitational forces versus the sun's gravitational forces versus where even like Jupiter is situated in the solar system in order to be a larger gravitational force to absorb a lot of the asteroids and the thing that like all of the Goldilocks of it all, that we even exist, is so astronomically not possible. So to me, if in fact it is possible, because we're evidence of that, then I can fully believe that there are all of these other things that from a scientific standpoint, you go like, yeah, but the probability, it's like the probability of what?
Yeah.
Of us even talking about probability? I mean, you know.
Yeah, man. But it's so true that AI, I mean, Neuralink it's so exciting. I can't wrap my head around the Elon haters out there, given what he's done so far, like already for society, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm not like a fanboy. I'm just like, it's very plain to me, like what he did by buying Twitter.
Yeah.
So now we have a town square that's uncensored.
Yeah.
Right? For better or worse.
Yeah.
What he's doing with Neuralink, people forget that, right? Because all they hear on the legacy media is Nazi this, Hitler that. What he's doing with Neuralink, he was, I mean, super quick to put Starlink, right?
Yep.
Over like Gaza, Ukraine.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, building like the best electric cars that exist. It's like, I mean,
because he cast his lot with the wrong side. You can't. I mean, this is where you see programming outweigh people's own like ability to just like objectively kind of ascertain something, right?
A really close friend of mine truly believes that Elon deliberately gave a Nazi salute.
I know.
Yeah.
That's insane.
I'm Jewish.
Yeah.
Like there's no part of me, there's no cell in my body that believes that he wittingly gave a Heil Hitler.
Not at all. Listen, and a lot of the people on the left hate this argument, but it's true. Listen, I'm very pro Elon. I'm with you. I think that the guy actually is like, he's a little spectrum-y. You know, he's a little like got this amazing computer of a brain. And oftentimes with a lot of really intelligent people, social programmings aren't number one in how they ultimately evolve as who they are. And so they have an awkwardness sometimes in how they carry themselves. I mean, him jumping around on the stage like a little kid and whatever it is. I mean, that's like, I love it. There's a freedom in that, right?
You wouldn't do that though.
Well, no, not like that. I did it with a lot more style. I did a little dance or something like that. But a lot of people hate this because they're like, oh, you're just making excuses for him. It's like, no, I'm not making excuses. I'm asking you to just look at what does someone who, let's say, puts more emphasis in being cool and being more refined, how did they behave? And then you're looking at somebody like Elon who cares more about solving problems than he does about looking cool. So he's going to gesticulate and move and do things that are not necessarily the normal way of doing things. And it's not an excuse for it, but then just look at what he does. He goes and he puts his hand on his heart and he goes, this is for you all. He's like, I love you all. It's not whatever, he's not doing the thing and then putting his hand straight out and like, this is what it's like, come on, guys. But because the media is grasping for every little thing, man, when I came out politically, and I've said the various things that I've said, even before I came out politically. Like I criticized Pfizer years ago because I was watching what was happening during the pandemic and even pre-pandemic. All of the, not just Pfizer, all of the pharmaceutical companies that were absolutely 100% guilty and found guilty in court to the tune of billions of dollars of payouts because they knowingly put out drugs that were not even really effective in treating what they said they were going to treat, but actually were super detrimental and killing people. And they knew they were doing it and they did it anyway. And then because they're a pharmaceutical company and not an individual, well, they ran the numbers. They go, okay, well, by the time anybody figures this out, we'll have made $15 billion. Then there could be a class action lawsuit. We might have to pay out 5 of that, but we netted 10. We all get a slap on the wrist and we just keep moving forward and we keep doing what we do. It's like Jesus, right? So anyway, I say all that to say that I was very critical of Pfizer even before the pandemic, and then became even more critical of them during, because as we continue to learn, there was so much fuckery and so much deception and so much everything, and we need to be critical of these people. Just by me agreeing that I was critical of Pfizer through a tweet, the shitstorm that came from that. And then people going like BuzzFeed and writing these hit piece op-eds about, the dark history of Zachary Levi, and which was full of either a bunch of lies, things that were absolutely not true. And they say, a source says, like a source, like what the fuck? But then even beyond that, going and looking through other opinions of mine that I, by the way, still stand by to this day, but they'll want to take that and twist that, even though when I said it the first time, they had no problem with it. And they'll do the same thing to Elon, and they'll do the same thing to anybody else who dares step out of the agreed upon narrative of who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. And so that's why people are so hateful of Elon. And listen, it's not doing him any favors that, like we began talking about, Doge is doing a great service for this world. I believe that with everything in me. And also, we are losing good people who voted for Trump and who didn't vote for Trump, but good people who work within some of these agencies who are doing a good thing, and we need to try and be more surgical in how we make these cuts. Okay. I believe that wholeheartedly, but I think that there are people who are downstream of these cuts. And of course, they're going to despise Elon because they had a job and now they don't have a job. So there's a lot of things that are all compounding into that. But the biggest of all of it, like if Kamala got elected and hired Elon to do the same thing, the media would be loving him for this. You can go back and find videos of Obama, of Clinton, of everybody saying the same things. We got to get in there. We got to cut the waste. They just never did it. It was all just talk. It was, we got to get in there and do the thing. And the American people, all of us are like, yeah, we agree. We got to go do that thing. But then it all just gets kind of put back into a corner, and they don't really talk about it, and they don't really deal with it. Now it's happening. And it happens to be happening under the watch of Orange Hitler. And so you have to hate it. You have to hate everything about it, So it's a bummer, because I do think that, again, none of us are perfect. Elon's not perfect. President Trump's not perfect, whatever. But I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for people that, do you see that there is a major problem, and are you willing to actually roll your sleeves up and go try and take care of that problem? And I think that they are,
Amen. And RFK Jr., he's not perfect either. But in my lifetime, or at least as long as I've been paying attention to what's going on at the level of government, the fact that we're now all talking about the chronic disease epidemic, right there, he's already achieved that. The fact that now everybody is talking about this.
Yeah.
And yet it's become politicized. Health and wellness have become politicized.
It's insane, dude.
Yeah.
Even before he got into office, there was a lot of these weird articles coming out like, is working out the woke right? Remember all these things? These weird, it's like, what are you saying? What are you saying?
Fitness has become a far right obsession.
Yes, yes. Yeah. It was like New York Times or something. It's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? But again, I think that those are journalists. I put that in the loosest of quotes, but those are journalists that don't even realize that they are being manipulated into believing some of these things that they believe, that then underpin these op-eds and because this person who I trust, who also is in a position that could give me a raise, or, I can work, I want to please them. And so I'll dive in, I'll go do this whole hit piece on this stuff and, make sure that people second guess whether or not they want to go work out, when really at the top of all that, it's like Lugavere pulling the strings and be like, no, we want people to be really unhealthy so we can get them all stuck on all of semi-glutides and all that stuff. It's like, come on, guys, follow the money,
100%. And American health has just gotten worse and worse under the watchful eye of the credentialed class. And now it seems like it's just like the same way that you'll see many with TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. Now it's been transmuted to RFK. It's like RFK DS.
Yeah.
RFK derangement syndrome. And
that's a hell of an acronym. RFKDS.
Yeah.
RFKJDS.
RFKJ, yes. Yeah. It's a bit of a mouthful. But it's like, where were they over the past, 10, 20, 30 years where obesity in this country has tripled, right? Like, it's just gotten worse and worse. And now still, if you go to any, I don't know if you've seen any of this, but if you go over to most nutrition PhDs, not all, but many registered dietitians, those that have now come out against RFK and the Maha movement. I mean, you scroll through their profiles, and it's just like they continue to gaslight concerned Americans. Like if you go to their profiles, it's all just like seed oils are great for you. Whether or not you believe seed oils are the devil incarnate or perfectly fine to consume, as part of a quote unquote balanced diet. I mean, they parrot the same talking points. It's like seed oils are good for you. It's misinformation that they're not good for you. Artificial, synthetic, petroleum-derived food dyes are fine. Artificial sweeteners, fine. It's like they just continue to turn a blind eye to the problems and the concerns of Americans. And to me, it's just such a breath of fresh air that now we're starting to, that we're being rightfully publicly skeptical of all this stuff that we've just been, coerced into accepting as normal.
Well, I think, I'm pretty sure it was you at one of those hearings, one of those congressional hearings or something. I'm pretty sure it was you that said, when you go into a grocery store and there's a health food section, what does that mean everything else in the store is? Like it's such a clear and poignant, like really well said. I remember watching that clip and I was like, yes, like what does that mean? What does that mean? And it's terrifying. It's terrifying that something so simple, it should be so simple. Like that's the easiest math. To be able to recognize that, hey guys, we're not doing well. The math is, the data is, we are the sickest of all developed countries by far. And we have the highest amount of money going into our medical establishments. That math ain't mathin'. You should be very upset about that. But instead, there is so much financial interest in keeping us in those places that they're very good at, whoever's pulling all these strings are very good at these social conditionings, little ones. I mean, little ones, big ones. I have no judgments or I cast no aspersions on anyone out there who struggles with obesity. It's not something I've struggled with in my life, but I can only imagine it's an incredibly difficult thing to struggle with. But I also cannot go so far as to then believe the social conditioning of that's totally healthy. That was this really weird, insidious thing that started coming from like even fashion magazines and, we want to be body positive. It's like, okay, like you can be body positive. You can love people exactly where they're at and still say, hey, you can be healthier. There's a healthier version of you that's in there and let's help you get there. But if you stop the conversation by immediately attacking everyone who dares, has the temerity to say, hey, there's a healthier version of you that you can be. How dare you? How dare you be so fat phobic? How dare you be this and that? It's like, whoa, what? If we were all doing something that was making us all gradually lose our eyesight and people are going blind, we wouldn't be like, you know what? You're perfect just like you are. No, you'd be like, I want to help you get your sight back. You're putting things into your body that are causing you to go blind. But would they be able to start a coalition of like blind is beautiful? And by the way, and it is, if you're born blind or you are dealing with blindness, obviously there's nothing but love. There's like, it's all inclusive of all that, but we should still be able to have a threshold of what we can all look at as reasonably healthy and strong, a healthy and strong body that is operating optimally and efficiently. And if you have anything in there that is not, sometimes those things are just handed to you through your genetics. Sometimes those are choices that you make. But either way, should we not all want for everyone to go and march in that direction and be our healthiest, happiest, strongest self? We should. But the social programming is so insidious, man. Like through social media, through legacy media, through whatever it is, it's not, Jordan Peterson talked about this. It's like, it's not like they go and just take it all in one big jump. They'll go push the boundary a little bit. And some people go, well, wait a minute. They go, oh, no, that's it. We're just going to go to right there. Just that. And they take, a couple of yards. And then a little bit of time goes by. And then there's another little social program and it takes it a couple more yards. Like, hang on a second. It's like, no, that's it. We're just going to do that. And that eventually happens and happens and happens and happens and happens. And then you find yourself going back to like the trans conversation, Like, I have no issue as a libertarian, you want to go identify as whatever you want to go identify as. You want to go live your life however you want to go live your life. That is entirely your decision to make. And I will be as respectful as I can within whatever those decisions are. But libertarianism, and which I think is kind of, definitely at the root of everything that we have here in this country, is respecting the fact that you have your liberty and I have my liberty, and ne'er the twain shall meet. You are not supposed to be rubbing up against my liberty in the same way that I'm not supposed to be rubbing up against your liberty. And so for it to have gone so far as to now we have to have women like Riley Gaines who are like, wait a minute. And by the way, God bless her, man. Like, the amount of shit that she and other female athletes have taken to hold the line and be like, what are we doing? There's a reason why we have male and female sports. We all, for thousands of years, understood that the male physique is a stronger, faster physique. That's science. That's not even like a religious belief. That's science. That's what we've all known. Hunters and gatherers, we had specific jobs, physical jobs that we would go and do. We were built and created and adapted to these things. And so in order for women to have a fair competition, it can't involve human chromosomes or male chromosomes. It just can't. That's not a religious belief. It's not anything. It's just like pure science. We got socially programmed bit by bit by bit by bit by bit by bit until finally then Leah Thomas gets to go and swim after, being a mediocre male swimmer at best, and then dominating all of these women, including taking Riley's award. And we all just go like, well, I guess that's what it is now. It's like, yeah, that is what it is now. How did we get here? Why is it okay that just any biological man, regardless of how they feel, like I get like, and that's the thing. It's like they say, well, what about my feelings? And you go, okay, I want to consider your feelings. Have you considered the feelings of every woman in that locker room? And are you just saying, you're just negating all of those because you believe that you're so right in what you believe that they don't have any right to believe what they believe? Nah, that's not how that shit works. That is not how it works. If you want to go, like, again, I don't know what all the solutions are, but I know the solution is not, we just start to pretend that there is not a difference, scientific, biological difference between XX and XY. Like that is, but again, that is just another example of why are these fitness, health people on social media going this route and towing the line and carrying water for the seed oils and everything else. It's like, Lord knows they got contacted in some way, shape, or form and kind of initiated into, look at the, what's that dinner, the journalist dinner that the White House does? Or
the White House Correspondence
Center.
Yeah.
Journalists used to be super critical of politicians. And then slowly, I think the politicians are like, let's just like make them feel really special. Let's just slowly but surely, we just kind of wine them and dine them literally. And we make them feel really special. And they're kind of in on it and they're a part of it. And you know what happens when you do that? They start turning them some blind eyes because they're like, well, you can't make it on without breaking eggs. And because we like Joe Biden and we like Barack Obama and we like, so we're going to give them a little more grace. Like, yeah, they may screwed up here and they screwed up there and they'll talk about it, collectively, but we're not going to really take them to task because that's not going to look good. And we got to toe the line. You just bring people in on that. These influencers who are all pro seed oil or like anti-red meat and all these things, no matter how much data continues to keep coming out, which is, to me, superior data, they're going to keep like, no, because I'm a part of this group over here and they make me feel special and I'm going to, keep saying whatever nonsense comes out of my mouth.
Yeah, and it's either incredibly weak data or it's data that's been bought and paid for by the food industry. And that data is then weaponized to influence public behavior, public, shopping habits and the like. And it all comes down to the bottom line. And so to me, it's so frustrating when you see especially people, in particular, people with credentials, because those are the people with trust, right? They have trust in those 2 or 3 letters after their names. And they continue to be apologists for the food industry and for the pharmaceutical industry, which is, under their guidance, under their watchful eye, seen public health just be disseminated. That was the word, disseminated, destroyed. There was another word that I was decimated. That's the word that I was looking for. Yeah.
Well, and by the way, and I would say part of that too is it's like that Mark Twain quote, it is easier to fool someone than to convince someone that they've been fooled.
Amen.
And I think genuinely, I think a lot of people that are still towing the wrong line, whether it comes to the pandemic or current pharma, well, it's still kind of tied into that, or food or whatever it is. If they trusted the science and they thought they were being a good doctor, they were being a good scientist, they were a part of the team. They were like, all right, the Lancet says this, well, then it must be true. And therefore I'm going to do my part in that. It is so hard to get someone to literally check their ego enough to say, I was wrong. I'm so sorry for all of the people that I misled on social media. I was misled, and I hope that you can forgive me. That's where we need to go. But there are so many people, influencers and doctors and scientists, people that up until that point, you absolutely probably could have trusted because they're well-meaning, they were trying, but now all this stuff keeps coming out. And if they weren't initially on the bandwagon of like, oh man, seed oils are bad. And let's say they dug their heels in because like, oh, this is pseudoscience and it's coming from Food Babe, and who's Food Babe, and she's not a doctor. And it's like, whatever. And it's like the egos that are involved in all this stuff. They can't let it go. No. They're not right. I'm right. And no matter how much more data comes up, it's like they have to dig their heels in and dig their heels in and dig their heels in. Same thing is going on with like, Graham Hancock,
somewhat
a little bit.
Yeah.
Graham Hancock and like ancient civilizations and all that stuff. I love it, right? Because I think there's this huge, massive cross section between spirituality and ancient civilization and aliens and whatever all this stuff is. But there's a lot of evidence, like a lot of ancient temples and architecture, like the pyramids, that are inexplicable, like genuinely inexplicable. There's no way that those stones, those 100 tons, whatever it is, like it's outrageous, the number, the weight of these things and the precision with which they were cut and stacked and everything. Yes, for the longest time, when we started discovering these Western, Europe, British archaeologists coming in, the ancient Egyptians, and they're coming up with all these theories about how it must have happened because we didn't have as much data back then collectively to start putting together, wait a minute, actually, maybe this is something that predates that. Maybe there's something we don't understand. No, ancient traditional archaeologists, they dig their heels in and they go, Graham Hancock's a quack and he's not a real archaeologist and he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's like, or he's exactly who, because you guys are unwilling to unsettle the science. You're unwilling to go, maybe we were wrong. Maybe there's some more stuff here that we need to like dig into. They just go and slam him, and they slam you, or they slam Vonnie, or they slam Callie, or those guys, they don't know what they're talking. They're jumping in the bandwagon. They're following this kooky, Bobby Kennedy around. They don't know what they're talking about. I'm a real doctor. I know what I'm talking about. And all they're doing is they're terrified because they are deep down, they might even know this stuff is really sketchy and I shouldn't be promoting it, but also like, I'm so pot committed. They're so pot committed to the lie that in order to turn them around, it's like nearly impossible.
Yeah. Well, their days are numbered, in my view, particularly with the rise of AI and the application of AI for healthcare. I mean, it's going to be hard to gaslight people when we're asking these algorithms that have access to all of the world's knowledge and the best thinkers in the field. So I'm optimistic. Yeah, it's crazy the stuff you see on social media. I mean, also, I feel like most of the time, like the loudest advocates and apologists for foods like seed oils, like they typically won't even consume them themselves. It's all just like moral peacocking on social media.
Yeah.
And like tribal alignment with their fellow credentialists,
Yeah. Well, like Steve Jobs wouldn't let his kids have iPhones.
There you go.
What does that say?
Yeah, right.
What does it say when these people who are the heads of these food companies don't let their kids eat their processed food that they make? It's like, guys, to me, what's the wackiest thing about all of these things is that it's really seemingly very obvious. But you have to really step out of the matrix in order to see the matrix. If you're still in the matrix, it's like, no, this is all, we're good, right? Like, I'm not being poisoned. That's crazy. Why would the government do that? Why would they allow these? We have regulatory agencies. The FDA clearly is checking all of these ingredients. But all you got to do is the slightest little deep dive and recognize that the checks and balances of our regulatory agencies, first of all, are so corrupted by lobbyists and everything else. But like the head of the FDA, more often than not, just came from a pharmaceutical position, the head of a pharmaceutical company, then becomes the head of the FDA. Then after they're done there, they go back to working for a pharmaceutical company. Like the conflict of interest in all of these things is completely evident. It's right there in front of our faces. But you have to be willing to first just say, okay, maybe I'm wrong about everything. Maybe there's a lot more that meets the eye, and I need to go deep dive into it. I mean, speaking to, the corruption. I mean, I'm sure you saw this, that there was a whole hearing about SNAP and about, trying to get soda and processed food out of...
The soda companies were like, they opposed.
They opposed.
Disallowing the spending of SNAP on junk food, sodas, sugar sweetened beverages, and the like.
And the American Heart Association showed up and testified for them.
Oh God. The same group that for years was telling us to consume margarine and trans fats and seed oils. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And has been wrong this whole time.
They initially were given startup funding by Procter & Gamble.
Yes.
A couple $1 million.
Yeah.
Back when it was just like a sleepy little professional organization. Yeah. To now their stature as the most influential cardiovascular health related or, lobbying organization in the world.
Yeah. Getting their funding in large part from these big corporations that are creating the things that are creating the issues that they're supposed to be helping to eradicate from the world. And it's a lot of people that are just lost in the programming. There's really good people that work at the American Heart Association.
Yeah.
And they can't fathom the idea that maybe they're being bamboozled. They're like, no, that's crazy. Why would because we all try to look at ourselves as being a moral person. And so then we assume and hope that the other people that we deal with in our lives have got to be at least, we see that there's bad people in the world, but like, why would Kellogg's be making a thing that they know is having adverse effects downstream of people consuming it? Why would they do that? It's like, guys, it's money. It's money. It's always been money. I think one of the things that really struck me when I was able to kind of, I don't know, like I felt like God just kind of hit me with this understanding, which was the ego is fascinating because it's a survival mechanism. It's a thing that we're born in our mammalian self that is about survival. So much of this life is surviving. Certainly it used to be in a much more, let's say, intense way, right? When it was a lot of life or death things that were going on and we didn't have modern medicines and so on and so forth. But in order to survive, way back, the beginnings of who we were, tribal us, hunter-gatherer us, you needed 5 things. You needed food, water, shelter, clothing, and community. And I would argue that the community was the most important of those 5 because with it, if you were unable to get those other 4, you had a good chance at being able to have access to those 4, right? If you got hurt, if you were sick, whatever, well, guess what? You've got community that's got your back. But those were the 5 elements. There was nothing else. There was nothing else that your ego was craving for, needing in order to go live and survive. So you could quiet the ego by just making sure that you had those 5 things. Then, 12,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, in Sumeria, perhaps, wherever it really started. But this concept of, we started agriculture. We started kind of building more civilization. All that stuff is like ancient civilization stuff too. Oh my God, we could go forever. But we start having civilization and we start now kind of spreading and planting and spreading. And we have all these different people with different jobs. I'm farming, you're making pots, that person's got goats, whatever it is. And it starts becoming cumbersome to barter between everybody because we're so spread out. And it's like, well, listen, I've got this corn and you got those pots, you need some of this and I need some of that. Do we need to walk around with all this stuff all the time or bring it all the way to the market every time or whatever? No, we can use these little shells, and the shells will be representative of the worth of whatever all this stuff is. And we've all agreed that one shell is worth 5 heads or 5 ears of corn and 1 pot and half a goat or whatever it is. And like, great, genius. What a cool way to have these, this tender, this legal tender. But I'm fully convinced that I think it was a really unintended consequence. But essentially what happened 10,000 years ago, whenever this really started to take shape, was we hijacked the ego. Because the ego was satisfied with 5 simple things, right? But now all of a sudden the ego is like, well, wait a minute, I don't need 5 things, I need 1 thing. All I need is those shells. And if I can get more shells, then I'm more secure. I will have more. I will have more food and more water and more clothing and more shelter. And ironically, I will have less community. And we've been fighting for and chasing the shells for thousands of years. If I just get more, And that's where greed, that's where all that corruption, it's the ego surviving, trying to get the thing so I can have all the food, water, shelter, clothing, community. But then it's like, but it can't stop. It cannot stop itself. It's like a dog eating. If you just keep giving a dog food, it'll just eat until it pukes. Unless we can curb our ego and recognize that we don't need all of that, we will be corrupted by this process over and over and over again. So when people sit around and they think, no, that organization, that industry, that corporation, surely they're not valuing profit over my well-being. Certainly they're not valuing profit over the health of this planet. Certainly they're not doing that. Certainly they are. Because their ego has lost itself to just more shells. And it doesn't matter. And they also, I think, been all programmed to kind of look at human life as being less and less and less miraculous. We live in a disposable world. Everything's disposable, including human life. It's like, well, there'll be more. And also AI's coming. We're not going to need you guys very much longer anyway. So why not make a buck right now? Why not go and poison you guys with this stuff and we'll just keep making money because it's cheaper for us to do this and whatever. Maybe you got some problem. But then the umbrella company that's feeding you all the poison might also own the pharmaceutical company that's treating your symptoms. I mean, it's just fucking bonkers. It is bonkers. But you already know all this.
Dude, so fun, man. I love the way your mind works. You're such a powerful thinker and voice. And I'm so glad that you did decide to stick your neck out and speak truth to power.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Well, listen,
incredibly valuable.
I think that we have to the ego is about self-preservation, and we have to tap into that. We don't want to make stupid, foolish decisions and go get ourselves killed. But I think that there's a higher calling in all of our lives that requires us to go to a place where we recognize that it's not always about self-preservation. That we have to be willing to sacrifice. We have to be willing to lay some things on the line. Plenty of people have done it far more drastically than me or you. They died for this country. They died for freedom. They died for liberty and continue to all over the world in various places. So if it meant, sticking my neck out and possibly not being an actor anymore, well, that's some of the things that we've got to be able to do in this life. And I really do feel like I've been called to that. As much as that makes any sense, I don't know. But ever since I was a little kid, I just knew that if I did nothing else in this world, I needed to go be a leader for positive change and use whatever platform I've got to do that. So I'm really grateful to you. I'm really grateful to every single one of you guys who has used your platform and decided to not just get swept up in what could have been the most comfy, the most profitable, the most whatever, and said, okay, yeah, I mean, I could go get bought by all of this groupthink and hive mind and whatever, or I can remain true to myself and to what I'm seeing and what I'm believing. And even if it means that I might get flack for that, even if it means that I might, lose that deal or this, whatever, like, we got to trust that standing up for what is right is more important than any of those things. So,
amen. You want to look for people, for others who are not fighting for what they have, but fighting for what they believe, despite having stuff to lose,
Yeah.
Like, you had a lot to lose.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot to lose when I decided to out myself,
Yeah.
For what I believe to be the right path forward
Yeah.
for this country. And, I think a lot of people now in the public space, like RFK, I mean, he's lost a lot. I mean, he's done so much good in the world already from an environmental standpoint. But his family disowned him, his extended family.
Yeah.
Look at Elon Musk. I mean, half of the Tesla stock is now worth, currently as we record this, half of what it was a month ago, 2 months ago. It'll go back up.
Yeah.
But you want to look for people who are not fighting for the status quo, but fighting for humanity.
Yeah. Yeah. And recognizing that it is a fight that is required. It doesn't just happen by itself. If you feel called, if you feel pulled, if you feel like I will be living dishonestly if I do not go and step up and have my voice counted and do whatever I can. Like that was one of the things that really sat with me. I was like, there were probably, millions of well-meaning Germans in 1930s Germany who were looking at what was happening, but they were scared. And they're like, I don't want to, this could be very bad. And he's a very angry man and he's yelling a lot, but it's going to be okay. Yeah, it'll be okay. We're all going to be okay. And then it wasn't okay.
Right.
And I was like, man, I would kick myself for the rest of my life if I didn't do everything that I could to avert what I thought was going to be an absolute crisis. And I believe that it would have been. And I know that you saw that.
Yeah.
And I know that you fought for that too.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah. And so is Bobby right now and Tulsi and President Trump and Elon. And, it's not going to be, there's still a lot of fighting to do, and it's not going to be the easiest road,
and mistakes will be made.
Yeah.
And you just got to remember to remain human, to hold on to the best parts of ourselves and to be compassionate and empathetic and to, have strong opinions, but loosely held and be able to pivot when new, and more compelling data presents itself.
Amen.
Amen. Well, I know you've got a lot of stuff out. You've got a book, you've got a movie that you just released.
Yeah.
How can people find you on social media? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, well, so the book is called Radical Love, and then there's a kind of a daily reader that goes along with that got released called Go Love Yourself. And they're really, Radical Love is just about my journey through my own mental illness and mental health, and anybody who is struggling with loving yourself or anything like that, I would recommend it. It's a very cathartic book, and I know that it's definitely resonated with a lot of folks, and so they can go check that out. That's wherever books are sold or whatever. I don't know. At Zachary Levi is all my socials, X and Instagram. Those are the only two that I'm on. And the movie Unbreakable Boy is out. At least I think it's still out right now in some theaters. We came out about a month and a half ago, or I don't know. I don't even know how long things stay in theaters now anymore. Like they're in and out pretty quickly. But if you get a chance, go see Unbreakable Boy. It's a really wonderful movie. It'll break your heart in the most beautiful ways and put it all back together again. And then, other projects, going to go shoot some more stuff down the road, but we'll talk about that the next time.
Yeah, hell yeah, love it. I haven't seen Unbreakable Boy, but I watched the trailer before you came in, and I was like, on the verge of tears. It was very emotional.
It gets you. It really gets you, because it tackles the human experience. It revolves around, in large part, and it's a true story about a real family kind of navigating the waters of being married and raising children, the oldest of which has autism. And I think that in and of itself is very applicable to a lot of people's lives right now. But even if you don't have kids or have a kid on the spectrum, it's just about the human condition, and it really, it hits you. Bring some Kleenex.
Yeah, I love it, brother.
Yeah.
Last question that gets asked everybody on the show: what does living a genius life mean to you?
I mean, I think living a genius life is recognizing that true genius is really understanding that you want to have both really high levels of empathy and really high levels of logic, and allowing those things to constantly interact and evolve each other and grow each other. I think that there are some people that are geniusly empathetic, and there are some people that are geniusly logical, but they're missing the other hemisphere. And that genius then doesn't get to do the greatness that it could do in this world without being balanced by the other, So to live a genius life is to go deep dive into yourself, to work on yourself, to make sure that you as a vessel, as a heart, a mind, a soul, are operating at your highest levels to conceive of ways that this world can be a better place. And then having the empathy and logic to be able to then apply that and not just make your life better, but make everybody's lives better.
Amen. Well, thank you for sharing your genius with my audience.
Thanks for having me.
I value
I'm so
you,
glad
brother.
it worked out.
Yeah, of course.
Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.